Internet cafes. Speaking from experience, this was when video games peaked for me during a time when I was about to enter high school. Once I was exposed to computers, I never touched my Sega Genesis ever again. Even though it was sad and all, I had no choice because, honestly, PC games were much more fun. Now, I don't know if it's the same in other countries, but in the Philippines, internet cafes were like a cult where once you are in, it is very hard to get out. Back then, most students my age couldn't afford a PC of their own. That's why these internet cafes were a lifesaver and a haven for us young gamers. And these cafes were everywhere since it was a profitable business. I kid you not. In my neighborhood, there were like 3 or 4 internet cafes in a single street. And there were even more in other parts of the town. There were also different types of internet cafes. And although the price per hour was somewhat the same in each establishment, the cafes themselves are not the same. Some cafes didn't even have air conditioning and could only afford fans. Fancy cafes with AC were usually the ones that people would pick since, well, it had AC. But for a young teenager, I didn't care if I was sweating like a pig as long as I could play my precious video games. And I wasn't the only one who thought the same as me. And with almost all of the customers being guys, you can imagine the smell inside the cafe. Boys will be boys, I guess. Now, about the games. Well, it was clearly an upgrade from the Sega Genesis, but even though the games were better, there was a limit of games to play during that time. I know there were lots of amazing PC games back then, but the owners of these cafes don't think like that. What they want is a simple game where friends could play with or against each other. That's why multiplayer games were much more popular. In almost every internet cafe, there will always be games like Counter-Strike, Quake, Battle Realms, StarCraft, etc. These were the kinds of games that brought in the most customers since it was more fun to play with friends. I had this thought too. That's why I never touched single-player games. But I'll talk about that later. For a good chunk of my high school life, all I played were multiplayer games. And as the years went by, these types of games continued to get better and better. Warcraft and Left 4 Dead also made a huge impact since they became very popular, especially with the former. But I don't have to remind you how that game went down in gaming history as one of the most popular games to this date. However, in my 3rd year of high school, it was this time when I slowly started to play single-player games. A friend of mine had a PC, and one of the games that came with it was Diablo 2. Yeah, this was the trigger that made me go down the rabbit hole of single-player games. It was bound to happen sooner or later. Half-Life, Doom 3, Halo, Grand Theft Auto Vice City, Medal of Honor, Hitman, Deus Ex. The list was endless. My world shattered when I discovered that these kind of games existed. I was bitter that I never knew earlier about games like these, but it didn't matter because I intended to play them all. And play them all I did. Even when I graduated from college, I continued to play in internet cafes. Besides, all my friends were there, and at this time, I still didn't have a PC of my own. I kept playing multiplayer and single-player games during my young adult life. At this time, online games were starting to attract attention from the public, but I think that's a story for a separate video. Everything was going well, until the pandemic happened. We all know how dark those times were. Naturally, internet cafes were affected by this since customers stopped coming. Even after everything returned to normal, the loss was too great as most of the computer shops in my town never opened their doors again. It was truly a great loss, not just for us customers, but also to the owners. There used to be at least 12 internet cafes in my town, but as of right now, only 2 remained. Almost everyone now has a PC or a laptop, including myself, since they were such in demand during the pandemic. Sure, it's much more convenient, but there was something special about hanging out with friends in an internet cafe rather than just play alone at home. And there you have it. That's basically my experience with video games throughout my life. There were some ups and downs, but without them, I wouldn't be who I am today. For better or worse, video games will always be here as long as people continue to play them. and I can't wait to experience the new generation of games that are yet to come. Yes, I will be playing Grand Theft Auto 6. Thanks for watching my video. This is something new I'm trying in my channel. It doesn't matter if I don't get that much views, but as long as I can share my life experience to all my subscribers, then it's enough for me. Stay tuned for more life stories from me.